I'm Sarah Efron. I'm a member of the Globe and Mail editorial team. I'm on the opinion team right now, but previous to this, I was small business editor for quite a few years. So it's great to be back here at the Small Business Summit. I'm here today to talk with Robert Gavreau of Gavreau and Associates. That's an accounting firm in Peterborough. He's also the author of a book called The Wealthy Entrepreneur. Thank you for joining us today, Robert. So we're going to take a few questions later from our folks watching online and from the folks in the audience here today, but let's get started and I will, whoa, my phone, forgive me. Never be far from your phone, folks. Security blanket. Let's start talking about the rising costs of pretty well everything that is become a big struggle for small businesses, particularly energy, the cost of labor. How can a business forecast their cash flow when they don't even know what anything is going to be costing them?
For sure, and I think to maybe take a step back to, I'm a business finance expert. I'm a CPA. My role is to just analyze business financial statements and help business owners take their business to the next level as far as a profitability standpoint goes. So this is exactly what we do every day, and I think the greatest opportunity that business owners have is to make sure that they're constantly analyzing the financials inside their business. A little bit of a story, I like to tell stories too. I had one client a few years ago, he's a butcher shop. He had a multi-million-dollar revenue business, and ultimately we were supposed to meet on a month-to-month basis and review his finances. And he put it off, and it was a very similar economic environment to right now. And we ended up meeting at the end of his year to review everything that had happened, and he came in and he showed a loss. And he was shocked that this had happened. And we went back and we analyzed the situation, and ultimately it was the same time where there was fuel increase costs. And his supplier had increased and created a fuel surcharge on all the inventory he was purchasing. So at the end of the year, that fuel surcharge ended up costing him, diminished his margins, and he lost money. So for any business owner out there, now's the time to be really, really strict on monitoring your finances and making sure that you're paying pretty close attention to those invoices and those supplier costs, because we have to relay that price increase onto our consumers. And I think, we're all consumers in this room as well. I think at this point, we're all really ready to be paying more. Unfortunately, everybody's talking about inflation and the cost of everything going up, but we can't be the business owner who's not increasing those prices, because it will result in us in potentially having losses.
It's stressful though, because if your competitors are not raising at that rate, it takes some nerve, but now's the time to just do it.
Yeah, great question, great point. Instead of focusing so much on the price increase for the fact of showing a price increase, I think as business owners, we all have an obligation to demonstrate the value that we're giving in response to the money that we're receiving. And we do a lot of training on value-based pricing, and I think it's imperative that we as business owners, one, understand that if there's any sort of price hesitation, it's likely our own mindset, not the consumer's mindset. People are willing to pay if they receive value. And essentially it's an equation that says if they perceive that they're getting more in exchange for the money that they're paying, they're getting a deal and they will pay for it. So if we're having hesitation on price increases, I think we really need to focus on how we package our value together and how we relay that messaging, because just relaying that messaging in a better way, in a more positive experience, will allow us to justify higher prices.
Another thing I know is on a lot of entrepreneurs' minds is the raising of interest rates. What would you say to business owners who are worried about their financing costs right now?
Great question. And we do this pretty much every single week. We're talking about this right now. And for the most part, we're saying, okay, guys, get ready. If we're close to the line right now, if we're finding that our financing is at a ceiling, the costs of that financing are going to increase, right? It's likely based on the chief economist that I was attending a session with last week, it's likely we're going to hit another 2% by the end of the year, which is a little frustrating, but I know back in 2006 when I bought my first house, my mortgage rate was 5.85%. We're not getting back to that. It was manageable, right? Like we can deal with that. What I would say, the response for a business owner is, right now our housing value has never been higher. So let's look at that as an opportunity to say, let's capitalize on the high value, let's get a home equity line of credit in place as a safety cushion that just gives us a little bit of temporary relief to be able to continue to work on our day-to-day and focus on strategy instead of the increased costs of interest. At the same token, our goal inside our business should be to be generating maybe around a 20% return on investment or 20% bottom line on our revenue. That's going to be substantially higher than the interest rates. It's still going to be beneficial to continue to invest in our businesses and in our growth. So just don't let the interest rates scare us too much that this is going to hold us back. Like, let's continue to push forward.
Continue to grow, but it must make business owners nervous to tie your personal home into your business. That could be scary.
100%. And, a lot of the banks, and I know CIBC was out there as well, but a lot of the banks, essentially, when we go in for borrowing, they want security, and which is fine. And one of the securities that they normally ask for is a personal guarantee or a corporate guarantee. And some of my clients come in, and of course, if we can eliminate that, great, right? Like, that's fantastic. If we can sign off on debt without having any sort of personal responsibility on there, that's great. But I tell a lot of my clients, if you're going in and asking for money, how are you expecting that they're going to give you money if you won't even sign off on the fact that you're going to be dependable on that loan? So, it is nerve-wracking to continue to have that debt and to continue to have increased interest rates. But I think, we're in this for a reason. If we have a plan of attack, if we know what our goals are, if we know the direction that we're heading inside our business, as long as we can map out how we're getting there, we should have a very clear plan on how even continuous borrowing is going to get us and our business to the next level.
But there is an upside to the raising of interest rates that if you have money parked in your business or in your personal accounts, you might be able to get more. What should people be thinking about now or in regards to that?
Yeah, there's always the other side, right? And so in our firm, we actually have a law practice too, where people who have surplus cash, we lend out as mortgages. And so as mortgage rates continue to go up, the interest and the return on investment on the other side is going up as well. So there certainly is opportunity. And, from a market perspective, I'm not an investment advisor. I'm sure there's investment advisors in the room, but there's a lot of fluctuation in the markets right now. And one of the great things when there's fluctuation is the opportunity that sits there. We don't necessarily, if you're not an active trader, you don't want to be looking for those, one-day quick wins. But if the market goes down and there's an opportunity to invest back in, we're going to capitalize on some of these, increased inflation, increased values that will be coming down the line. Tony Robbins has been a mentor. I don't know if many of you know Tony Robbins, right? I worked with him. I was a partner in his Global Accounting Advisors group, which was part of his business mastery event. And one of the things that he would always talk about is making sure that in times like right now, that we try and get as much access to cash and capital as we can, so that when we do have, I don't want to say the big R recession word, I know, but when it does happen, because it will happen at some point in the future, when we do have that happen, we have cash resources available to go all in and rise back as the economy recovers.
What about government grants? I mean, most of the pandemic stuff is dried up. What are some things that people might not know about?
Yeah, the last couple of years have been pretty good from the government standpoint, right? For us as business owners, the wage subsidy for anybody who was able to capitalize on that was a pretty generous, especially right out of the gates. I think they miscalculated the benefit that they were giving out to us as small business owners, which was fantastic. We'll take it. We needed it. So yeah, those have kind of dwindled away. The business account, the $60,000, $20,000 forgivable, that's still kind of lingering around for most people. But what I am seeing right now with the banks from a business lending standpoint is the banks are hungry to reinvest right now. For anybody who needs a small working capital loan, BDC Canada still, and they were amazing with small business throughout the pandemic, but now that we've kind of pushed through that, they still have a $100,000 online working capital loan application that if you need $100,000 inside your business, that you likely can get that in your account within 5 business days. So, which is pretty incredible. So that one's still available, but you're right, things are tightening up a little bit, and that's why I think when it comes to that home equity line, even if we never use it, let's get that in a position right now. The banks like to fund when people don't need it. The moment you need that funding and those cash resources, it becomes a lot harder because you have to demonstrate that you're in a good position. Well, you're not in a great position if you're going and asking for money, right? That's typically the outcome. So right now, again, I think there's an opportunity to capitalize on those house values at as high as possible. Like, what is the average transaction value in Toronto right now? 1.2 million? That's insane from where it was before. But if we're a homeowner or we have real estate and it's appreciated in that sort of high level right now, let's get access to that cash, even if we never have to use it. Get that home equity line of credit lined up now. It'll take all the pressure off down the road.
And in terms of government grants, do you think the average business owner, small business owner, can do them themselves, or should they go through one of these consultancies, or I'm not sure if that's something your company does? Can they navigate that world independently?
Yeah, it's definitely not something that we do with our firm, but I think for the most part, any of the ones that I've just talked about, the BDC loan application for sure is very, very simple and straightforward. There are consultants out there who can go out and find money, especially if it's scientific research and development. We work with an agency that goes out and puts a package together for anybody who's kind of in startup phase to try and get access to money. So there are those agencies that are out there. They're great. They typically work on sort of a contingency fee where whatever they get you, then they take a percentage, like 20%. So, depending on what type of business that you're in, sometimes finding those advisors and those government agencies or the funders for some of the government agencies, it could be helpful. For the most part, though, what I would recommend if anybody was going down that path is to not get into sort of fixed fee. Try and get into those contingency fee agreements, because it's easy to shell out $2,000, $5,000, $10,000 for loan applications or government grant applications and not get anything back. So it's nice, thinking of the SR and ED claims. If you can get somebody who can go get you $100,000 and you pay them $20,000, I'm happy to put $80,000 in my pocket versus pay somebody $5,000 or $10,000 and not get anything out of it.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit about long-range planning. I think it's been such a hard period to see around the corner with so much disruption, and I think business owners, they want to think about those big goals, but they're always being pulled into the day-to-day. How do you find the focus and the resolve to do that kind of planning right now?
Yeah. Anybody know Grant Cardone in here? Show of hands, Grant Cardone. So he's got a book called The 10X Rule it's essentially a book on planning and goal planning. And one of the things he says in his book is always shoot for larger aspirations than you even think you're capable of. 10X it, right? Go all the way in. He said, I would rather fall short at my $1 million goal and be $700,000 or $800,000 than just reach my $100,000 goal. Stretch yourself and push yourself as far as possible and hold yourself accountable. So one of the things, if anybody hasn't read the book Traction by Gino Wickman, it's a really great book. I talk about it in my book as well. But talking about goal setting, looking at what that 10-year plan looks like. Does everybody know what their business looks like in 10 years? Because I know about 6 years ago, we started our 10-year plan, and we're at about the 6-year spot of it, but it's because we've been following the path, right? So I had a goal 6 years ago to be a $10 million company in revenue. So we're at about 7 right now. We're at the 6-year mark, and I have 48 employees. My 10-year goal had something like 80 employees. That now is terrifying. I don't know about you, but 80 employees is a scary situation. But looking at that and making sure that we're really clear on where our business wants to go. Because if we don't know where we want to go, how do we know how to get there? right? So let's plan that out. And I always, kind of allude it to going from Toronto to LA in a car. You're not getting in there without a GPS. We've got to have the GPS connected, or at least a map, so that we know what road is going to get us there the fastest way. And I think that you have to dedicate time to doing this sort of planning inside your business. For us, we suggest a little bit of a model, one that you do annual planning for your 10-year, 3-year, and 1 year. And then quarterly you meet to revise it and make sure that you're on track. We then push it down, and this keeps going down. We push it down into a weekly management meeting inside our organization where we track all of those numbers, right? Our 12-month numbers, if it's, let's say our business wants to hit $5 million a year, what are the numbers we have to hit on a weekly basis in order to get there? Because if, you've heard it before, what you can measure, you can manage. I'm a finance guy, of course I say that. But it's so important to hold not only yourself, but your team accountable. Set goals, tell them what it is that they need to do to be an A player in your organization. Show them that, if this week, if you make 3 sales and its average price tag is $5,000, that's $15,000, you're on target for having a fantastic year. Not only are you going to get a raise, be a high performer, but the company is going to continue to grow and you're going to have greater opportunity in the future. So everything needs to be broken down from 10 years all the way down to what do we have to do today in order to achieve those goals. And honestly, it becomes part of a routine. Every single morning, our organization at 9:09, we just have a play on a number because everybody will remember 9:09 instead of 9 o'clock. 9:09, everybody gets in a huddle, all 48 people. Within 10 minutes, we talk about what we did yesterday, what we're doing today, where we're stuck, where we need support, and what has gone really well. So we do that every single day, 10 minutes. For me as a CEO, now I can go into my business every morning at 9:09. I know exactly what everybody's up to throughout the day. I know where they're struggling. I know where they need support. I know where we're behind maybe in some of our goals. I know where we're beating some of our goals. But that daily accountability is so important to helping reinforce those long-term goals.
Well, one thing we were chatting earlier, you were saying that all your employees are in the office even though your clients are in different cities, which I think is a bit counterintuitive. A lot of us here in Toronto, we're very much in the decentralized universe. Do you want to tell us a bit about why you chose to bring everyone back?
Yeah, well, first, my 9:09 meeting is all on Zoom, right?
Okay.
We're not forcing everybody into crowded areas again. Pre-COVID, we could have all fit in one room, but now we can't. There's too many of us. But we do have that 9:09 on a Zoom call every morning. So we still utilize the technology. It was funny, we were talking about this before, and I said, we really are a cloud-based CPA firm. Even though we have a physical location, we serve all of North America. So I think that technology is pretty great. But for us, as a leader, it was really, really difficult when the pandemic happened because, of course, everybody was worried about safety and health, and we wanted to make sure that everybody was protected. But after about 2 months, some of our younger people who were in our organization were struggling, right? They didn't have that connection, they didn't have the support, they didn't have the training that they needed, and we're a CPA training center. So we're bringing some of these younger people in. They needed more support than to jump on a Teams call with one of their colleagues a couple times a day. So we had to make a difficult decision to say, you know what, we're all coming back. One, we've got an A+ culture. Everybody really enjoys being together and the collaboration in our environment. And two, we had a large enough space that we could still safely feel like everybody could come together. Prior to bringing everybody back, we could see that we were performing at about a 70 or 80% level. And, our team wasn't able to be as productive without the support of each other. And I don't know, whether it was, individuals maybe not encouraging themselves to be as productive as possible, or the lack of ongoing support and collaboration. We focused on it being that. And then when we brought everybody back together, our productivity pulled back up, and something to be said about having an environment supported by A+ players and incredible people that just makes going to work that much more exciting. So that's our environment. I know downtown Toronto is a little bit different right now. A lot more people in a lot smaller space, But for us to have that culture and that collaboration back, it was a game changer.
Let's see if there's some questions from the audience, the online audience. Andrea, is there any questions that have come in?
Yep, we have one. Someone's asking what resources you would recommend to someone who's new to doing accounting for their small business.
Yeah, great. I always, as soon as I hear that question, I always go, okay, who are the sponsors for the event? Let's try not to upset anybody, but I don't think there were any accounting software companies that were part of this. QuickBooks Online is a fantastic resource for small business. We work with about 800 business clients mostly across Canada, but we've expanded into the US as well. And I would say 99% of those business owners are using QuickBooks Online. It's a cloud-based platform, which is great. You can jump on, your accountants and anyone else who needs to support you can jump onto the same platform. And it's also got an automated bank feed, so it pulls all the transactions into the software for you. It somewhat automates the simple part of the bookkeeping, but the thinking part of the bookkeeping is still kind of there. But for sure, it's the best platform, at least from my perspective, on the market.
Okay, well, let's take some questions from folks in the room. Put up your hand and then wait a second, we'll have a mic runner come out. Does anybody have any question? Oh, I see one over there. Just hang on and Mike will come to you.
Hi. So what types of projections should we have if we're looking for financing, and what types of elements should we have inside the projections? How detailed do they have to be, et cetera?
It's a great question. So looking at obtaining any sort of growth-based financing, you're definitely going to have a package together for the banks. The banks like to see the last 2 or 3 years financial statements, which is always a great thing to have available. Typically, notice to reader financial statements work fine, depending on how much borrowing you're looking for. So that's going to be, your least sort of expensive type of financial reporting. So that is one piece. Then looking at the projections, they tend to like to have it signed off by an independent party, just because it's into the future. So they, someone like me comes in and doesn't question the estimates, but just looks at the assumptions on how are you going to go from 1 million to 100 million in your business over the next 6 months. Let's make sure that that can be formulated. But so I would say, on average, they like to have a 2-year sort of projection. I like to see it monthly, so that you can even tie that into what cash flow looks like. So when I go in and build projections for a bank to go in and get new financing, I always want to make sure that the new debt is in there, showing as a cash repayment, so that we can make sure that the new money that the company is using in there can afford to, it's building the business enough so that it can afford to repay it. So we want to show that cash flow repayment piece as well. The other thing that the banks are going to want to see is your Canada Revenue Agency statement of account that shows nothing owing, which sometimes is a bit of a challenge. Even more before that is the notices of assessment. Got to have those filings done. Nobody likes to file their taxes, including me. I'd much rather file your taxes than my own. But going through and filing your taxes, making sure they're done on time, no penalties, right, and no balance owing on those taxes is going to be huge, because typically the banks won't fund unless those balances are paid off, or maybe you have to use those funds to pay it off. So that's kind of what my package would look like. Notices of assessment, both personal and business, if you're incorporated, projections for at least 2 years with monthly cash flow, and then your financial statements for your business for the last couple of years. That's a solid package, right? From there, you should be good. The next level is, do we need a formalized business plan? My answer would typically be no. You likely don't need that for the banks. For some of the other government agencies who might give grants and loans, yes, you might need it. It's dependent on who it is that you're going to for the borrowing. But typically, I wouldn't say that you need a business plan, but there has to be a reason or some rationale for how you're growing your business with this. So they're going to want to know what that is. So if you need to formalize that even in a one-page memo, then that's probably a good package to put together. The next piece I would say, just to maybe take that to the next level, once you have this package together, this is something that you send off to 4 or 5 banks, right? You take the whole thing and you say, hey, we're looking for this money. We're going to put it out on the table. We want the best rate. We want the longest repayment period so that it's not impacting our business cash flow. We want the highest loan to value in there as well. We want the least security. All of those areas, throw it out to all the banks, because what I can tell you is in the last 6 to 12 months, the bank's interest in different types of businesses have changed. Right? So CIBC, Scotia, TD, Royal, they're all changing in what they're hungry for. I had a client call the other day and someone was starting up a new licensed marijuana facility, and the banks essentially said, not interested, thank you very much. Even though there was a lot of demand for it, they had a lot of capital, the bank just said, nope, that's not something we're interested in getting into. We wish you all the best. In fact, they gave them recommendations to other banks, which I thought was interesting. So I would take that and I would put it out there and say, whoever gives me the best deal, this is what I'm going to go for. And a lot of times, if you're looking to acquire real estate, that's also going to be the best thing. So for anybody in here too, personally, and hopefully there aren't a bunch of people who work at banks here, but I would also go for any refinancing and I would go to a mortgage broker, right? Get the broker, they're going to take your package and they're going to send it out to all the banks and get you the best deal, right? Instead of just going into one retail branch, I'd use a broker because there's going to be different banks with different interests at different times.
Interesting. Do we have any other questions? Maybe this side of the room, anybody?
I love bankers, by the way, just so we know, right? Like this is who I deal with on a day-to-day basis.
Robert, I'm glad you love a banker because I'm a banker.
Excellent.
And I work for CIBC. I just wanted to say you have a whole bunch of bankers in this room who can give you really good financial advice. And if it's not CIBC, that's okay, but you should really get a business advisor. I would strongly recommend that because no matter which financial institution you're dealing with, they can give you really good, sound advice. Businesses are not created equal. Every business is different, and you really need a good, solid business advisor.
And absolutely, and just to follow that too, I think most advisors have a specialization or an experience in certain areas. And I think, for me, when I first started my business, one of the areas that I didn't research enough was which banker was going to be the best for me. So even, looking at CIBC and saying, yep, there's advisors for each different area. I know now which one specifically focuses on professional banking, and that's the advisor that I need to go to because they have the most knowledge and support of how to support, the professional services world. So absolutely, I echo that. And for us, we love to be great partners with the financial institutions. It tends to be that we're maybe doing a little bit more of the legwork to help the financial advisor pull together a package and a loan to really support the business. So it's really, really great partnerships. You have to have a really good team of advisors, for sure.
I think we've got time for one more question. Does anyone have one for us? Okay, I see one here. Just wait for the mic to get to
Thanks for the advice. Apurva here from CIBC. Fraud is huge. How do you deal with that, and what are your top 3 tips around that? Thank you.
Yeah, fraud is huge. So I guess I can speak personally for me about how we manage fraud risk in our organization. We've got a 24/7 remote IT department in a secured offsite facility with armed guards, right? So we take it pretty serious, which is then backed up. I think it's in Toronto and it's backed up in Vancouver. So the idea of people gaining access to, IP or confidential information is definitely a major threat. What I would say is everybody's assessment of their security is going to be different. We have a lot of confidential information that, for me, my career is essentially over if I don't take that as serious as possible. So we have to invest in whatever we need to do to get there. I know actually the banks are probably the best ones. I know a lot of the banks are doing fraud-based seminars on a lot of the challenges that are happening in the online world and the transfer of information. But for me, I think again, it depends on everybody's individual circumstance, but all of our tech needs to be protected. As a quick example that's somewhat humorous, it's not so much into the losing confidential information or anything. One of friends of ours had their nephew using their iPad, and they were working away and somehow got into the Amazon account and had a skid of toys show up at their office that was about $10,000 worth of stuff show up. So not that it's fraud by any stretch, but it just shows you the protection of the information if the child who was using the iPad could get in there and just start ordering away. Thinking of how much we need to actually protect that from people who are looking to do that. So it's something we need to take very serious. I know for us as well, we have an insurance policy as well that's like an additional policy that helps. It's essentially an investment for us should something happen that we have that covered as well. Because I think, again, all of us need to take that super serious because everything that's in our business right now could be gone if somebody really wanted access to it.
Great. Well, we're going to have to leave things there for today, but we appreciate all this great information. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. Okay.
We're going to have a very quick message from one of our sponsors, Salesforce.
You know that feeling you get when things just magically work? And you're like,
wow.
Yes, well that's Salesforce. It's like
when my barista knows exactly how I take my chai teas.
Or that I like my hotel room set to 82 degrees.
Like when my car books itself to go to the shop.
And I get early access to a hot new sneaker drop.
Wow your customers in a whole new way with Salesforce.
I'm just trying to connect to Josh Okane, my colleague, who will be doing the new next session. Hello, Josh.
I apologize for not being there in person today. I had a COVID exposure that I found out about this morning, and as a result, I've decided to not infect you all, and I will be in this dark room in the corner of my house. So thank you very much, everyone, for attending the Small Business Summit today, and I apologize for not being able to be there. I'm a technology reporter with the Globe and Mail and a former small business reporter as well, so I know the sector quite well. Joining me today to close out our event is Casey Gundiam. Casey is the founder and CEO of B2B Match, a business matchmaking platform launched in 2020, where small and medium enterprises can connect in order to outsource, scale, network, and find clients. Thank you so much for joining us today, Casey. All right. Casey, can you hear me?
I can, yes.
Okay. All right. I apologize. I will try not to just idly type away when I don't hear anything, but I think we're good now.
It's all good. Innovation, right?
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. A lot of us know about Red Dot, your digital insights firm, but maybe some folks here want to know how you got your next business rolling. And, I'm wondering, what made you decide to launch B2B Match?
Right. So just for the benefit of everybody, B2B Match is an AI-powered business matchmaking platform for businesses to connect online. So think about it a little bit like a dating website, but for businesses. So I've launched 3 weeks before COVID. I couldn't have timed it better. Literally, it was absolutely perfect in hindsight. What came about is me trying to build a service organization, service company for about 4 to 5 years. I was traveling the world. I was, hustling, as we say, building a digital transformation business. And then after one of the many, many trips, I came back and I was like, there has to be a better way for services companies to sell their businesses. And I built the platform I wish I had, during all this time.
Okay. Can you walk us through what adoption was like during the pandemic? Was it super swift? I mean, people were, those early months, I imagine, I remember everyone trying to figure out exactly how they were going to be operating, their businesses and how they're going to keep their connections alive and bridge new connections. So could you walk us through what adoption was like during the pandemic, starting in the early months and sort of over time as people got used to it?
Absolutely. So I remember we launched 3 weeks before COVID, literally, and we had a marketing plan. Everything was laid out since September the previous year. And a couple of weeks before, I was in Europe presenting this platform to a bunch of different associations, and 99.9% of them basically said, yeah, it's an interesting idea, but we have our events online, like in person, so we don't really need something like that. So there was that 0.1% organization that was really excited about it. And we said, okay, well, let's see what happens in the next couple of months, maybe a year, and see where we're going with this platform. And then COVID happened. And overnight, all those people who thought it was an interesting idea in the long term called me back and said, okay, what do we do with your platform now? How can we go in? Because we have all this membership. We have all these small, medium businesses around the world that now are at home. It can't do anything anymore in person. So that was how the adoption really took off. We signed a huge number of partnerships internationally, but also locally to help onboard SMEs. I'm happy to say that 2 years into the launch, we are now present in over 60 countries and have about 120 industries represented on the platform.
Wow. So with that much adoption, you mentioned 60 countries. What trends have you noticed that sort of developing over the last couple of years on the platform, once it started getting picked up? Are there any interesting, perhaps, regional patterns?
Absolutely. So we're mostly capturing data from SMEs. So differently from a lot of organizations like are doing something, I want to say similar, but not exactly like us, we're an opt-in company. So you give us your data, and you choose how your data is used. We don't scrap your data, we don't steal your data, we don't share your data. So we capture about 60 data points from SMEs that come on the platform. And what we do, we analyze them. I personally analyze them every day, and I look at what the trends are. And we've, let's say 9 months into the launch, I've noticed something very interesting. One of them is geographically, and the second thing is with the type of businesses. So the type of businesses is we found that women businesses around the world, not just Canada, around the world, and at the time we had 25 countries when I saw that, behaved completely differently from the other businesses on multiple different points, whether it was the type of businesses they were running or the type of industries that they were present in, even the type of profile that they were building on the platform. And then geographically, what I found is clusters were beginning to appear. So we had the US, we had the UK, we had the UAE that came out of nowhere. We have Canada, we had Germany, the Netherlands, Australia, and so on and so forth. And what we found is, depending on the geography, SMEs were behaving differently. American companies, specifically the West Coast, were behaving, were adopting the platform rapidly. The UAE, massive adoption as well, different industries. And when we had the Canadian companies that were very slow in adoption and that required a lot of onboarding and a lot of hand-holding to get onto the platform. And I can go on and on and on about those what the difference is.
So I actually would love to, I think that's a great way to sort of, we're at a Canadian conference. Could you walk me through sort of what you learned about Canadian SMEs and how they were using the platforms perhaps differently than other jurisdictions? Absolutely. So first of all, nobody gets pissed off at me. It's not me saying it, it's the data. So what what we found is, compared to their peers around the world and in different clusters of similar markets, Canadian companies were really slow to adopt technology. So for example, for a company like in the US, they would sign up to the platform, and if they didn't understand something, then they would talk to us.
Whereas the Canadian company would talk to us first and then sign up to the platform, which for an SME like mine, it was a lot of burden in the customer service, in onboarding companies, and getting them to actually use a tool that was not only free for them, but also was all benefit for them. So I think that's one of the main things I've found is risk aversion of the Canadian SMEs.
Well, I mean, just based on all this data that you have and all these interactions you have with organizations all around the world, what do you think Canadian SMEs and their owners and executives, what can they learn to become less risk averse?
Honestly, take more risk. If the platform is free, and we're also offering additional visibility, promotion, and reach to another 59 countries to sell your services and products, and we're doing a lot of the heavy lifting for you, take risk. It's going to take you 10 minutes to sign up. There's a very solid legal agreement that my lawyers drafted about your data. And just give it a chance. We're doing a lot of the work. And the reason also I built this platform isn't for me. You'll go on the platform, you won't see my face there. You won't see my name there. I really built it because I wish there was a tool like that when I built my own company. So I really built it for my SMEs, peers and fellow around the world. Yeah.
I'm curious then, what other lessons, did you learn as an entrepreneur, through the pandemic, about building a digital business?
I was a digital business before the pandemic. This is what I used to tell my clients before the pandemic. And when we built plans for them at the time, we always told them, plan for the unknown, plan for something you don't know about. And we always told them to plan for that time when they were going to face something they were not going to be able to plan or predict, or the factors, outside factors were different. And so when I started my digital transformation business 6-7 years ago, it was already a pandemic-free business. So what can I don't like giving advice because I believe that I'm still not on the other side of this, but I can tell you what I've learned is taking risks, calculated risks, is better than inertia. It's better than doing nothing. It's better than over-analyzing and overthinking. We're all business owners here. As a business owner, you have to take calculated risk. You have to say, okay, look, I'm going to take that risk. I went into countries, I knew no one. I walked into rooms, I didn't even understand the language. But there was one thing I knew, was my business and what I was selling had value. And it did make a world of difference to me.
We've been talking a lot about risk in this conversation, and in my own reporting, when I was covering a lot of small businesses, is that certain financial institutions didn't want to necessarily take risks in financing some SMEs. So I'm curious, sort of, what you believe might have to change, or what could change for Canadian entrepreneurs, to make accessing capital easier in order to sort of help grow the various sectors that are filled with SMEs here in Canada.
Wow, that's a really loaded question. No, but it's a really good question because I've been advocating for more funds to SMEs. I find that the funds, including the funds to digitize SMEs, specifically during COVID, was absolutely ridiculous. It was so small. And for having been, aware of budgets that you need to digitize your organization, what the government was giving or granting wasn't enough. We probably need times 10 to be able to do it. I think there needs to be a movement of SMEs. There needs to be a movement of SMEs that don't accept, the fact that we don't have enough funding and we don't have enough money. We have to demand more. There's money. I've had conversations that were really interesting because people say, there's money, we can give money, but we don't give it to just anyone. And they choose to not give it to SMEs. You have to have a threshold of a bunch of millions of dollars before you actually have significant amount of money. And that's just unacceptable because SMEs are 99% of the, the economy. So.
Okay. And, the economy, it's changed significantly over the last couple of years. As we all know, certain things are easier, but as you mentioned, there are some things, that are only getting harder. What else do you think entrepreneurs need to keep top of mind for themselves as they're navigating the economy as it's shifting in real time?
I think digitization is one of them. We have to shift from digital, digital is for kids and it's social media, to digital is actually about making money. And to take it seriously. I think it's really important as SMEs to really look at your digital plan as your business strategic plan. And this way you become international on day one. And as we know, Canada is a really small market. And by default market to export for most Canadian companies will be the United States. But there's so many other countries that are so ready to do business with us, but we need to get out. I always get very surprised when I travel in some countries and I'm asked, are you really a business person? I say, absolutely. I say, but usually Canadians are teachers and doctors. And I'm like, what? So I think it's time for us to really use and leverage the capital that we have as Canadian companies. We are peacemakers. We're really good at working in teams. We're fantastic at doing business. People usually love us. So let's get out and actually sell our services outside.
And I think that makes a lot of sense with what we were just talking about earlier about the risk aversion that you've been noticing is, we have these certain skill sets and perhaps we can just apply them in a different way for, as a solution for, various problems that various SMEs may be having. I want to talk about a different country right now. And, I understand when we were chatting beforehand that you partnered with Tech Ukraine to help Ukrainian companies secure new contracts. How did this come together? Can you walk us through that? That's fascinating.
Yes, absolutely. So when the war broke out, I'm part of a tech group, international global network of about 24,000 tech business owners and leaders around the world. And one of the latest chapters that was supposed to be launched, and it was planned months ago, was about, in Ukraine. And as the war broke out, we all thought this was going to be postponed or at least, canceled for now. But the Ukrainian stakeholders were adamant about, pushing through and launching that Take Ukraine company as, everything was a crisis for them. So we went along with this and we launched a chapter for Tech Ukraine. As we were doing the launch, one of the questions I had was, okay, so we're dealing with refugees, we're dealing with health and safety, we're dealing with all this. But one thing I haven't heard is, what are we doing with businesses, knowing that the Ukrainian IT sector employs over 300,000 people? So within that conversation, I had the idea of maybe helping in my way, which was offering them a free and complimentary partnership on our platform to make sure that Ukrainian businesses were able to onboard on B2B Match, but also creating a place for businesses who want to help and continue to work with Ukrainian businesses could actually also find a way to help and support them in a business way. So business resilience was important for me, and that's how I try to help.
And so how can others help? Can they log onto the service and just be able to work directly and to help with Ukraine? Can you walk the audience through how they might be able to help?
Absolutely. So when you go to B2B Match, there's Ukraine page that we have provided. You can go on and then you sign up to B2B Match, and you have a way when you're matched for companies to select countries, and you can actually select manually Ukrainian countries, and you will be matched with Ukrainian companies, and you can see if they fit or not. Pretty much like dating. Is it a company that you want to work with? Yes, no. If it's a no, you pass. If it's a yes, you swipe and you're good, and you talk to them.
Okay. So we're going to take audience questions in just a moment. So I'm going to encourage members of our virtual audience, if they have questions, to put them in the field now.
Absolutely.
And we'll take questions from the live audience as well. But before we do, I wanted to ask one last question, which is, what is some advice that you live by as a small business owner?
It's again, advice is very hard for me because I'm still in the trenches, right? Ask me that when I'm very, very old and, and I've already done this. But I think what has always been something that allowed me to reach further than anything I had ever planned was to take risks and believe in the strategy that I built. One other thing I found a lot of SMEs do, and also quite frankly a lot of big business as well, is they have a strategy, but halfway into it, when they're not seeing results, they just switch and they change and they start, going in different directions. You have to stick to strategy because it's like a garden. A lot of the time when you seed, you seed things before you actually see any plant, it takes time. So if you start switching your garden from tulips to roses to any kind of flowers before you actually see the flower grow, then you're going to mess up your own garden. So stick to the plan and believe that you will be able to see results.
Okay. All right. So let's give our virtual audience now an opportunity to ask a question. Do we have any questions coming in from people watching at home?
Yeah, we have one person asking about just what sort of advice you have on trying to generate sales and leads for your business.
Well, I have one. Sign up on B2B Match. Seriously, like what we do. No, but I mean seriously, it's what B2B does. It connects you with people who want to buy your business services, right? We have a lot of testimonials from businesses who have made connections in markets they have never done connections before. I have a couple of examples. I have a Canadian design firm in Toronto here who I think she signed up and then we did a profile on what she did. Within the day, she texted me and said, you won't believe it, I had already 3 requests for estimates. By the end of that day, she had signed one of the estimate. I mean, I can't talk for that better than, those testimonials.
All right. Do we have any other virtual questions?
Or comments?
Okay. Well, in the absence of virtual questions, I'd like to open up questions to our live audience. Is there anyone here have something they want to ask? No, I can't see, so I'm going to depend on the people in my ear to do the asking.
Thank you very much for your thoughts. I really appreciate it. I just wanted to rewind a little bit where you said that Canadians were a bit slow in adopting. Yeah. So because we are a business and we want to bring our products to Canada, at the moment we are in the US. So my question is that, do you have an idea what were the barriers that were stopping them to experiment first, or do you think that Canadians need a little bit more validation from a real person before they adopt a particular product? You can choose not to answer, it's okay.
No, I mean, it's a really good question. I wish I had an answer. Again, we look at data, inside it. I don't know. I know that Deloitte, for example, did a risk aversion report for a while and then stopped doing it because every year it was the same thing. I don't know. I think it's a mix of multiple things, and a lot of it might be business practices, and a lot of it might be the qualities of the default, right? It's great, like Canada is able to weather a lot of crises because of that business practice culture, but then on the other end, it does put them in a situation where it's a bit, it takes more time for them to adopt anything, yeah. So I hope I was helpful.
Thank you.
So again, flying blind here over on this virtual stage that I'm on, but I'm going to trust Casey to point into the audience if we have other questions.
Hi, I'm Pamela, and I'm from Brazil, and I'm starting to grow my business now. I'm in the marketing and branding industry, and as a small business owner, solopreneur at this point, one of the things that I have to deal with on a daily basis is what they call imposter syndrome, right? So there are a lot of things that we have to deal with, and we are one person, in my case, one person dealing with everything that I have to do in the business. My question to you is, have you gone through imposter syndrome?
I don't like being, sitting when somebody else is, so I will, yes.
Thank you. Then if you did, what did you do to actually deal with it, and get to where you are now, which congratulations, I love your business.
Oh, thank you. Wow, that's I definitely went through imposter syndrome multiple times, not once, in corporate, in this business, whenever I'm asked to do something which is the next level as well. Every single, like when I signed this partnership with the International Chamber of Commerce, this huge network of 45 million businesses, I promise you that I was wondering, I was pinching myself as to how within a year of launching this, I was able to land this, because when I went to this business meeting, never did I think they would choose me, right? I think you just have to, like the way I deal with it is, I give myself half a day to doubt, second guess, and maybe ask my support system, do I actually deserve this or not? But then after that, I move on. I move on. That feeling is gone. I'm there. I was chosen. I created that opportunity. I worked really hard. This is not an overnight success. This is a long years. And you just go. You just continue. I don't celebrate a lot, and I don't also mourn a lot on defeat. I just move on. Yeah, it's just. To me, the vision is way further than that. It's actually not even just business success. I want to be able to help the next generation to not be in the same position as me. Yeah. So, and congratulations on your business as well. So shall I just stay up and... Any other questions?
The voice in my ear is telling me there may or may not be other audience
we have another
questions.
Question.
Oh, we see you're pointing, so we can answer one
Josh,
more. We've got time for one last one.
We have 2 questions.
Okay. All right.
Are you good with taking
questions
them?
if they're quick.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Good afternoon. Thanks for sharing your experience.
You're very welcome.
I'm Dhaval Mehta, representing a company called Nanosoft. Now, we're in IT, so I love data. So I want to ask something about the data. Now, since we know already that the platform acceptance was less in Canada compared to the other clusters across the globe, my question is, what does the data tell us right after Canadian company sign up? Do you see a different trend in usage compared to the other geographical location?
That's a really good point. We actually have a dashboard that we're launching in version 2, which is coming out in a couple of months, which provides those people who have access to the dashboard to all the data about that network in real time, including the demographics, but also the interaction. What do they do? Who did they connect with? And so on and so forth. So I think it really depends on the industry. We have a partnership with the aerospace industry, and their interaction and engagement is a lot bigger than with other industries, for example. But it's very dependent on a lot of different criteria. It's not just one day, right? It fluctuates. So ask me in about 6 months and I'll be able to give you a lot more information. But that's a really good question. I think we had one, yeah.
Thank you. You're really inspiring. So Jen Shell with Finlity Corporation, and I'm building a fintech company, an IT company as well. And so I was wondering, what was your path to funding? Did you self-fund? Like, you could just talk about
Self-fund? I'm still self-funded. I'm self-funding because first of all, I was able to sign contract that allowed me to not need external investment. I was adamant also if I was to bring in anyone in the company, it needed to align with my vision. So I worked harder to self-fund than to actually find external investors. And I'll bootstrap as much as I can because I want to get that baby where it needs to be, and we'll see later for investors. Yeah, but I have to also provide information, and I'm not paid for that or anything, but it's something that has helped me. If you want to go international, work with the trade commissioners at Global Affairs. They're really awesome. They have helped me. They will provide you with some grants potentially, and I don't know exactly the details, to support some of your business development outside of Canada. They can also help you with understanding better markets outside of Canada. They've been fantastic. You know, when I have a question about a market, I'll go to them and I'll ask them, and they usually have, you know, great response. So that was my last advice.
All
Jeff,
right,
do you want
Casey.
to?
Yeah, well,
Thank
first off,
you.
thank you so much, Casey. This has been really fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing your story.
Thank you.
With everyone here today.
Thank you.
And yeah, I've got some like 30 seconds closing remarks. That concludes our program. We hope everyone here can stay and join us for some networking.
Thank you.
You know, virtually, thank you for coming. There will, for those attending, please join everyone else in the lounge for a networking reception. We'd also like to thank, on behalf of the Globe and Mail, CIBC, Salesforce, and Meridian Credit Union for supporting today's event. Thanks again, everyone. Thanks again, Casey. I hope you all have a great afternoon. Thank you.
Something about the way that you move at the late night parties till 7 a.m. 3 days later, you're still calling me. Easy with me and you, it used to be easy.